So when Olivia Rodrigo released Sour back in, what was it, 2020, a lot of people thought that maybe this could just be one of those debut album flukes where past that nobody's gonna care, but with this new album, which is titled Guts, I feel like that narrative should be thrown out the window. I mean, she released Driver's License and just took off from there, and her popularity just continues to grow. And with this new record, she decided to kind of not necessarily go in a different direction. It's definitely very similar to what her first album had to offer, but it was a lot more all over the place. Whereas, yeah, Sour had some of the more upbeat songs like Brutal and Good For You, a lot of it was more of the piano-led ballads, which this album still does have, but I feel like half the album kind of gives you those more upbeat songs sort of similar to Brutal, and yet the other part of the album kind of gives you more of that, you know, melodic kind of ballady stuff of that of Driver's License or Traitor. When it comes to my least favorite songs from this record, they come back to back on here, and that is Making the Bed and Logical. I don't know, these are some of the more, you know, kind of like mellower, softer songs, and these ones just didn't hit as well as the others. I found myself bored through those two songs, and it made me, you know, think to myself, am I even going to be able to finish this record if this is how the rest of it's going to be? Which thankfully it wasn't. It's just for whatever reason those two songs I just kind of like zoned out and like, huh? Oh yeah, right, the album is still going on. Then in my okay tracks, I have Lacy, Get Him Back, and Love Is Embarrassing. I feel like with Get Him Back and Love Is Embarrassing, it's just kind of like, yeah, you know, the whole Get Him Back song is a story about, oh, a girl hates her ex so much for what he did to her that she's just trying to find a way to get him back. It's basically a revenge story, and you know, it is what it is. I think it's mainly in my okay because it definitely is more fun than it is sad, so you can at least give it that. And then my favorites. All American Bitch kicks off the album, and she just, for whatever reason, has a really good job of, you know, picking those first tracks for the album. Brutal kind of gave you this false concept of what the album was going to entail, but nonetheless you understood the topics of what was going on there, whereas with All American Bitch you kind of almost get more of like a pop-punk leaning vibe, even more of a pop-punk leaning vibe than her single from her first album, Good For You, was. Then we have Bad Idea Right, which was one of the two singles that came out before the record. And although it took me a minute to really enjoy the song, I should say, I remember when I first heard it, I was kind of torn on it. It's a nice song, and it definitely does kind of remind me of Brutal in a sense, where the vocals are the same, and I just, you know, it's kind of more rock leaning than it is pop. Then we have Vampire, which was the first single from this record, and an intriguing one as well, because this was the single where she showed her fans, like, yeah, something different's gonna come, but at the same point in time, she gave her fans something that they would be more comfortable with and familiar with, knowing from her with a song like this. It just goes very well, and when it picks it up toward the end, it's just, again, a whole lot of fun. Then we have Ballad of a Homeschooled Girl. I think more about this song, it's just how, you know, she was too awkward and this, that, and the other, and she ended up getting homeschooled. I never ended up getting homeschooled, but I'm an awkward kid. You know, I went through things in school, and it sucked, and sometimes I wish I was homeschooled. But, you know, you go through life, you grow up and learn, and sometimes that can just lead to some really good life experiences. So, yeah, another really, really good one. Then we kind of get into more of the softer songs, I should say. The Grudge is definitely a ballady type track where Pretty Isn't Pretty almost kind of tails down the indie rock vibe where it's not necessarily pop or rock. It's just got that, you know, melodic slide to it where it just all flows very nicely. And the final track, Teenage Dream, is definitely a beautiful song. She shows off her vocals here. Basically your typical Olivia Rodrigo power ballad, but for the most part it definitely hits and is probably my favorite of the ballads on the album. So the question is, How did round 2 go for Olivia Rodrigo? Did she hit the sophomore slump? Actually, I think she might have done better than her first release. Even though I really liked her first album, I feel like this album is just taking what she did well from her debut and somehow making it better and improving. Some of the topics seem more mature, even though the lyrics at points don't tend to be, but nonetheless she's switching things up and becoming more comfortable with just being able to do certain things that maybe she wasn't able to do before. That's why I would give this album a 7.5 out of 10. Definitely one I would recommend to a lot of people. However, again, she's not for everybody. I understand that. But there's definitely some songs on here that I think some people can get into for the sheer fact that it's like, oh, here's like a pop punk song here, here's a pop rock song, here's a straight up ballad. Like, it has a little bit of something for everybody, including some point in times where you feel like an 80s tinge. So, you will probably find something that you enjoy from it, nonetheless, whether you like the album or not. But that's just my thoughts. You can tell me in the comments below, what do you think? And until then, stay safe out there, and I will catch you all in the next one.